Welcome to this afternoon's work session. Does any of the commissioners have any discussion items from the preliminary list provided for next meeting? And I will advise you that those items are real preliminary since we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks. So there's still time to submit other requests.
No, I don't, but I do have a quick, very important announcement. I just received a call that you all want to know.
Yes, ma'am.
The water is out on the south end of Clayton County. There's a main water break, so they're actually working to get it back on now. I just took that call, and it's affecting quite a few of our residents.
Okay. Any items? Okay, well, let's get into our discussion items. First is to create a new zoning classification, and I believe that Mr. Ejiki will make the presentation.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners, Vice Chair. My presentation this afternoon is to present the need for a new zoning classification, which we are calling RMTSF. It's an acronym to say that we're converting multifamily to single family. That's really how we get, so that the acronym makes sense to what we're trying to do. I'll give you a background as to how this got started. So, in the past, years ago, back as far back as 1987, developers, the code allowed developers to put single-family dwellings in a multi-family zoning. We have now found out why or what intent was. Okay, so background on this, in 87, that's when that was allowed. You have where single-family attached homes and single-family detached homes were allowed in multifamily zoned areas. In 2008, the zoning code update dropped the single-family detached and only allowed single-family attached. With that came the non-conformity issues, where they couldn't even add a room to their homes or build even a deck. We had cases where folks were, and we were sending them to Zoning Board of Appeals, knowing that it's cost prohibitive for some to go to that hearing because you got to pay hundreds of dollars to get there in the first place and fill out the application and go through the process. So we started talking and got to this point where the best way to remedy this, it's not to increase the degree of nonconformity, but to figure out a way to alleviate the issues. And that's the advent of the new zoning classification. This classification, if approved, it will resolve the non-conforming issues, but it will have a limited use. No property can rezone into it because it's designed to solve problems, and you're going to see the enormity of the problem in a minute. It is pervasive in the county, and we did it by districts. So we are still crafting the language for the making sure by the time we send it to legal, by the time we get to ZAG, the Zoning Advisory Group, the legal would have reviewed the language we are crafting and make sure we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Like I said earlier, no one can rezone into it because it's designed to solve a non-conformity issue that has become a financial burden on citizens. So what we did, kind of show you how we approach this issue. We know that we are looking at multifamily residentials in the county. What we did was use our system to go look at all multifamilies in the whole county. Divide those out in districts so that it's easy to glean what you're looking at and what is happening in each district. So by doing that, we also went further. When you look at all multifamily, because of the issue we had that we started with, one of the filters or the analysis is to look at homestead exemptions. Because usually you grant homestead exemptions to single family, residential, or things that are fee simple really. That's the ones you grant homestead extension from. So we went and looked at it and used the homestead exemption. It's about 5 or 7 of them. Gathered all of them, knowing fully well also that that subset of the larger county set will create some problems also, which we are working on. We went in and started using our GIS system to zoom into, if you look at the circles in District 1, those are the areas we are finding that type of housing. Then we went further in to go look to see what they look like, to see if we can glean what they are by looking at the area. Then we narrowed down, because we had a longer list, we narrowed down what we think it is. All this will be field verified before we get to ZAC. As commissioners, as you all know, when we come to do, there are 2 tiers to this process. Create the classification, then turn around and rezone properties that fit this building into those things. So we're going to have the parcels checked and double checked before we get to it. This is just District 1. And these are all single family detached subdivision zoned multifamily districts. This is District 2. Kind of shows you what is happening. Like I said earlier, we're going to go in and field verify. It's tedious and time consuming, but the plan is to do it. Before we get to the ZAC process, where we'll have to be submitting not only the language, but the parcels that are impacted. District 3, this is where it impacted District 3, and 4 is there. So that is our approach. I wanted to show a little bit of the modalities that we are going through to make sure that we kind of get all of them as much as we can. We have a schedule. Today we are on the highlighted, which is 824. And this is the process we're using. We kind of initiated this process first, then because I wasn't ready with the presentation, so we kind of postponed it to today. So we are at the work session. Our next step on October 4th is to get to ZAC hearing. Then BOC, you all will vote on the new zoning classification only, which is to create it or not to create it. Then in 11.2, we'll request to the Board of Commissioners to initiate the rezoning of impacted subdivisions. Then on January 2nd that should be 22, that will be the zoning advisory group hearing to handle the rezoning aspect of it. Then on 1/18/22 is the final vote to convert those parcels. So that's kind of the project structure right now as to how we want to proceed to do it. And the tedious part of it is the field verification of those, so we can put our eyes on them to make sure that we're not compounding any issues that might could be out there. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, is there any questions for Mr. Jenkins?
Yes,
Commissioner Hamble?
because I think I started this whole thing.
Yes.
Well, District 2 did. Okay, is there any reason we need to wait from that timeline? I think it was October something before the ZAG board can hear it?
It was the advertising requirements for the public participation part of zoning.
Okay.
So that's why we kind of laid out the schedule to be able to certify the zoning procedure law for advertising and the right process.
Okay. Now, once, hopefully, this will pass, that, will this prohibit any new single-family homes to be built in either of these subdivisions? Because you know what we have going on in Pine Shoals right now, somebody wants to rebuild from a fire or something.
The development standards that we're going to come up with will allow folks to rebuild within it, because the development standards are going to be designed for it. It's not going to do anything different from what they have right now, and that is part of the field verification, because it's a special zoning to allow them to improve their homes, add to their homes. If you have a bond building, that you can rebuild it there. Because we have one incident right now that a burnt out building that they couldn't rebuild. And so we're dealing with that. We're telling them, let's go through the process and fix it holistically across the county, because we know it exists other places. So yes, they can rebuild, build, but if someone comes to re-subdivide it, it will not be allowed. And that means, and based on the some of it we've seen, the prospect of property aggregation and re-subdivision, it's not really that possible. But if it ever happens, the answer will be no, we can't do it. It's a zoning classification designed to solve the problem.
Now, if someone wants to improve their property before the 22 date, before next year,
Yes. What we have been doing so far, because we have one or two, we send them to the zoning advisory board. That is the board that is legally could grant variance on something. So that's why we send them there. But in one of our meetings that you participated in, we acknowledge how cost prohibitive it is for a homeowner to go through the zoning advisory board to improve a deck or add a room to their house. So that's what led us to figuring out a more sustainable remedy to the whole issue.
so are we gonna go with what was decided on?
Yeah, what we decided on is that once the neighborhood is coming, when the folks in the neighborhood are coming to do that, to apply for changes that will go to zoning board of appeals, we are working with them on the fees and waiving the fee calculation with them. Waiving, what we decided with the neighborhood is say, okay, this is no issue of your own, it's something that has to happen in our code. And the real issue came in 2008 as zoning update, because prior to 2008, it was okay, it was allowed. But in 2008, it needed to be fixed. But that fix created the non-conformity. So we said, okay, if you are in these neighborhoods that have this and you come to us, we're going to work to you to make, that's why what we are drafting real fast is the development standards, so that we can start using them now, knowing that if the board approves this, that's the same standards we're going to use. But we putting it in the hands of the zoning advisory board, as you all know, for them to give us the legal cover to do it.
I want to say thank you all so much for working on this, because you know what a problem it's been with some of the citizens up in the in District 2. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Would the single-family attached and detached zonings go away, or will they still be intact?
No, our zoning as prescribed, as written, stays intact.
Okay.
We're just dealing with these areas that have this issue.
So this is an addition to?
Yeah, in addition
Okay.
to, yeah.
Okay.
Can you do us a favor? Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
You use the terms "this issue" quite a bit. Can you define the issue for us clearly? And you kind of went through it. So can we understand clearly what the issue is?
The issue is that in 1987, single-family attached and single-family detached could be built in property zone multifamily. And it was okay. Then in 2008, there was a zoning code update that removed single-family detached, which is our regular subdivision type buildings, out of that list. By doing so, once it got removed from that list, that means that the properties that are already in the RM district, they didn't move, they're still there, but it's zoned RM. The zoning update,
But instead of saying the term, say what RM is, please.
the multifamily zoning classification, the single-family homes that remained in the RM zoning, in the multifamily zoning district, became non-conforming because the 2008 zoning removed the single-family detached, says that it's not supposed to be there. But there are things there already, so therefore it made them non-conforming. As a result of the non-conformity, that means that you cannot do certain things because the code said you cannot increase the degree of non-conformity. That means you cannot exacerbate this non-conformity issue that you have. Therefore, they stop. Now, fast forward, we're here trying to fix it, knowing that in 2008 zoning, I don't think we saw all the parts of this. That's one of the issues you have when you do, or some of the things that come up when you do a county-wide rezoning. Sometimes it's not that easy to capture everything or to ID all the issues you might have. So that is what happened here, that at one point, single-family detached homes were allowed in multi-family districts. When the code changed, the text of the code, but the buildings already exist there, that made them non-conforming.
If I'm not mistaken, the board spent quite a bit of money, I want to say in 2017, rewriting all of our zoning. This didn't come up at that particular time when we spent all that money?
No?
Oh, wow. So the problem existed, but we weren't aware of it. So let me ask you this then, the other question. Because you said in order for someone to add a deck or do whatever, they have to go through particular zoning and then have to go through board appeals and you've been waiving the fee, right? How long have we been doing that?
We haven't, I think the citizens who, this just came up maybe a month now, we are talking, we're saying, okay, if you come through, then this is what we're gonna do. We haven't been doing it before.
Okay, so there was nobody had the issue before until recent.
No, they haven't, I will not say they haven't had it before, but if they had, we send them to BZA and they paid. It's when a number of communities started raising the question and had a meeting, and we said, wait a minute, we need to go look closer to see if this is isolated in one district.
Okay.
Then when we start looking, we say it was all over the place.
So I want to make sure I hear you correctly.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I'm trying my best to listen clearly. So the problem existed since '08. We paid money to do a rezoning in 2017. None of it came up. But in between the time, whatever this issue is, people have been going through the zoning process, but it wasn't until recently that some people were upset about this particular process that now we realize the issue. I got it. Thank you. I got it.
Chairman,
Commissioner Davis.
I know we've had a lot of issues in District 4 where folks are complaining about, well, why do I need to go to zoning and pay a fee to add on to my deck? So I know we've had those conversations in District 4. My question becomes, with the RM, the detached is gone, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we go in and begin to redefine some of these subdivisions with the new classification, will those homes that are already there be grandfathered in under the old definition? And on a, like you said, you spoke on it earlier, on a burn, on some kind of remodeling, major remodeling or minor remodeling, will they be forced to upgrade to the new zone?
It's not an issue of upgrading. It's an issue of creating an avenue for them to rebuild, or right now they can't. The only channel is go to the Board of Zoning of Appeals to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we are proposing allows them by right to make that within the new standards. And the new standards, it will be designed for them to be able to do that.
And one of the things that happened in District 2 was someone came in and wanted to rebuild a multifamily dwelling. And, you know, that just snowballed.
Yeah, and that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and when someone came, staff caught it. And we started saying, no, you can't do this.
Right.
And so it kind of started, we said, wait a minute. Then back to what Commissioner asked earlier, it's when did it start? Usually, there are things that happen, you send folks to a process. But in this case, that started, and the community actually challenged and forced us to go look at why that is. And that's when we started seeing it.
I have one more question. I'm so sorry.
That's right.
So I want to have a clear understanding of it only because, number one, it's important. Number two, we're putting in a fix, but the zonings are going to stay there. But in my quick search, I wasn't able to pull up, you know, this type of zoning in other areas, but I know we're trying to fix our issue. So I guess the question more so was for the board. So in the instance where they wanted to rebuild the multifamily home, that the residents want it rebuilt, or did they not want it rebuilt? That's what I'm trying to have a clear
They
understanding.
want to rebuild single-family detached homes,
In where it was previously multifamily.
multifamily.
So the difficulty is going from multifamily to single-family homes. Is that what you just?
No.
Okay.
Single-family detached homes are built in properties that are zoned multifamily.
Okay.
When they come to make improvements and submit site plan,
Mm-hmm.
and we pull it up, and the system says, wait a minute, you cannot do this. You cannot do this because you are in a multifamily area where single family not supposed to be.
Okay.
And they tell us they've been in there for 15, 20 years. Then the research started.
I think I really got it
Well, let me just say that regardless of when the problem exists, we know about it now. So I commend you and your staff for doing something about it to address the issue, and you're doing it holistically. So appreciate you for that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Ajiki? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I do have one more. Are
Commissioner
we
Davis?
working on any other ordinances to begin to kind of redefine? I know we had spoken about a few, and it seems like this is an exercise that needs to
I
take
looked at
place.
the CEO for a reason. Yes, we are.
Thank you.
By December, you're going to be getting from us. We need to do some things really good.
Yeah, let's try to fix as many as we can.
Yes.
Let's not
So we
piecemeal.
are working piecemeal, as has been presented here before, the residential and architectural standards.
Great.
There are certain things we are fixing piecemeal, but we want to concentrate largely on land use. We talk about zoning a lot. It's an instrument to implement land use. we are doing a project right now in District 4 where we're concentrating on land use. Figure out the land use first, then the zoning, you can make it whatever you want. So that is what me and the CEO have had this discussion, and our approach to redoing some of the stuff that's in the county. So you're gonna see it coming, so that when we hire somebody to look at our zoning, we have a prescription to give them. This is what I want you to fix. When you let consultants come give you what they think you need, you get what you don't want.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, let's go to mandatory trash collection. Survey results, Mr. Matarko.
Good afternoon. My name is John. Jeff, I guess I'll let you go ahead.
You must be eager to jump right in, I see.
Real quick, coming back to you with the results of the survey that the county hired Zen City to do for us. So really it's their show, so we're going to turn it over to Jonathan and Michael to lead us through this.
All right, Jonathan, Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I'm Jonathan. I'm the Customer Success Manager and main point of contact for Clayton County here at Zen City. And I'm going to be showing you through the results of the survey. I have with me as well a colleague of mine, Michael Simon, who I will let introduce himself, who is joining us as well to provide that additional layer of context. Michael?
Thanks, Jonathan. Good afternoon, evening, everybody. Michael Simon here, also from Sin City, where I run strategic partnerships. I'm a 15-year sort of veteran of public opinion survey research, and excited to have collaborated with the Clayton County team on this project. John, do you want me to walk through maybe I'll start with the report a little about how we did this research, and I'll kick it to you to cover the substance, and we'll take questions together. Great. So first we'll talk a little bit about methodology here. I just want everyone in the room and on this call to understand how we administered this survey. We'll talk a little bit about sort of the substance here, mainly covering 3 areas. Support among residents of Clayton County for mandatory solid waste collection, support for new services, what residents desire to be included in the new service and how they prefer to pay for it. And then I think a very important piece of context here, how big a problem is illegal dumping, and do Clayton County residents perceive that mandatory trash collection will solve this problem, and then we'll sort of talk about a few takeaways. I will say, before talking about the methodology and kicking over Jonathan for the substance, I think one of the great outcomes of this research is the results are pretty clear. You rarely do a piece of research on an issue like this for which there's some division and have sort of a pretty crystal clear takeaway. And I think that one of my takeaways from this research is that the residents of Clayton County generally have a fairly consistent point of view, and we'll talk about that when we get into substance. On the methodology, first of all, we did a very large sample survey, an unusually large sample for a survey of this type. Typically, we would do a 600 or 800 person sample survey to get closer to a 4% margin of error. In this case, we did a over 2,000 person sample survey of residents of Clayton County. Gets us to a margin of error close to 2%, which is again extraordinarily large and robust sample. Respondents were recruited via the internet. We have a sampling methodology that allows us to ensure we get a representative sample balanced to the actual demographic proportions of Clayton County by race and ethnicity, by sex, by income, by education level, by area of the county, and by language. We conducted the survey in both English and in Spanish. The resident was invited to take the survey in the language that their device was set to. So if your device is set to English, You got it in English, you'd like to set it in Spanish, you got it in Spanish with an option to take it in English. It was fielded over a period of about 2 weeks in the middle of July, from July 6th through 23rd, 2021. And then we did some limited weighting to represent the population of Clayton County. Frankly, the result in terms of representativeness was very strong. Very little weighting was needed to be done. I do want to note that we used a hybrid method here where we both, as Zen City, sampled the population using our statistically representative sampling methods to recruit a representative sample. We then also gave the county the opportunity to distribute the survey, which is something that we generally do. The respondents, about 800, came from respondents that were recruited by Zen City. About 1,200 came from those recruited by the county. We then, as a general practice, compare them separately first. We look at the results to see, are they similar from our scientific sample versus the general sample, or are they different? We found the results of this case to be almost one-to-one, very little difference between the two, which is not unexpected given how large the sample is. So we combined the samples into one, resulted in this one large 2,000-person sample survey, and the results we're about to share with you represent, again, this representative sample of 2,000 Clayton County adults over the age of 18.
Thank you very much. Today we're going to go through the survey results, and we're looking to answer those major questions. So first of all, do Clayton County residents support a mandatory trash collection? The results were in 83% of respondents supporting a mandatory trash collection. So that is a combination of somewhat support and strongly support, with only 10% of respondents showing opposition and 7 as not having a specific opinion on the matter. What we're going to do is basically go through and see how the level of support changes as a function of the demographics. What we'll start off with is municipal versus unincorporated residents. So we asked if they are living in the cities within Clayton County or in the incorporated areas. As you can see, and this is going to be a pretty common theme, what we're looking to really see here is that the support is overwhelming, and it's just a matter of how much of the other side, how much of the opposition actually comes up in each of these demographic areas. But the theme is pretty strong throughout. So as you can see, unincorporated residents, you've got about 13% in opposition, 5% for no opinion, and a very, very large 83% that is in support. Municipal residents, very close as well. Moving forward, we looked as a level of ethnic groups, and we found, again, to be a large volume of mostly support and somewhat opposition, but pretty close across these specific demographic groups. They're looking more into age groups, and we're able to see that really the largest amount of opposition was in the 35 to 44 age group, which was a total of 20% opposition, and you have 73% that is in that age group that is still in support of the mandatory trash collection. So what we can see from this particular slide is that the high level of support across all age groups, with the young generation, 18 to 24, showing slightly higher levels of support, and the middle ages showing slightly less levels of support. Looking as a function of gender, between male and female, we can see that females are almost equal on somewhat support, slightly less on strong support, and on the male side, slightly higher on the strongly support. Pretty even on the opposition here, again, relatively low. Now, as a result, as a function of resident type, so we looked at townhouses, single-family detached housing, and self-contained apartments. As you can see, one of the things that we sort of notice here is that in the self-contained apartments, a lot more people are, have less of an opinion on the matter. This is largely because it will have a smaller amount of effect on them, and you have most of your townhouses and single-family detached housing as having much stronger support. The townhouses having probably the largest section of opposition here, but again, the theme that seems to run all the way through is that of our large sample size, a vast majority are in strong support or somewhat support. Looking at a function of income level, so those earning the least, most strongly supported, mid-level earners are the most opposed, overall support is the strongest amongst both the lowest and the highest earners. So how do residents currently dispose of garbage, and how does that support change based on the current conditions? As we can see here, 7% of respondents don't have garbage picked up at their homes. Of those without garbage pickup, 61% don't have their own dumpster. So we asked a couple of questions around this as to where they actually do their trash. As you can see, 36%, and this is looking at this 7% as well. So we can see that the number of respondents in this particular group is only 110. So we can see the breakdown here between landfill, someone else's dumpster, and their own dumpster. If we look at support for trash collection by those with or without current garbage pickup service, 51% of respondents who do not have garbage services have a strong level of support. Those without is 51% support with a higher amount of no opinion. And those with are strongly in support with 64%, with a somewhat support of 21%. And only 10% of respondents who currently have trash pickup services actually oppose mandatory trash collection, which is particularly interesting. As far as how they're currently disposing of their garbage, those who have their own dumpster, 54%. Now this is still looking at that 110 respondents, those who currently don't have a service. Putting in their own dumpster, they have less of an opinion. Putting in someone else's dumpster, you're starting to look at a higher level of opposition in this small group. But even when you break it down and you look into these smaller groups, within that 110, which is within the 2,000, you're still looking at 42% support, with only 29% opposition at the highest level of opposition. Those who are taking their trash to landfill, between somewhat support and strongly support, looking at 79% supporting mandatory trash collection. So then the next question was to ask what should be included in the trash service and how should it be paid for. For this, we asked them to basically give a score with regards to which of the following statements they support. So as you can see here, a majority of respondents agree with all proposed options. However, there were some that were sort of higher on the support and the agreement. But all of these, again, more than 50% support and agreement. So a minimum level of trash collection service should be required for all county households at 66% support, agreement, and 14% disagreement. A single trash provider should be assigned to pick up trash for each area of the county with 57% support. Each household should be provided with a garbage container by the county for ordinary household waste. This actually had the highest amount of agreement at 76%, with the lowest disagreement at 11%. County residents should have the option of paying an additional cost to have recycling picked up from their homes. This is where we start to get into the conversations with regards to recycling specifically. and you have 55% are in support, with 22% neutral and 23% disagreeing. And then finally, council residents should have the option of paying an additional cost to have yard waste, furniture, and other non-standard items picked up from their homes, with 57% in agreement. As we go through, so now we're back to looking around, and as far as recycling services, 71% of respondents do not have recycling services at home. Yet the majority of respondents reported that it was actually important for them to have recycling services available to them. So as we can see here, 53% saying that it is important for them to have a recycling service at their home, which was quite interesting. As far as the preferment for how the trash collection would be paid for, it was pretty close, actually, as far as the two options of paying a trash provider directly each quarter versus paying the county as part of the annual property tax. With the property tax option at 50% compared to 40% for them paying directly, with 11% saying that they didn't. So looking at how much of an impact do residents actually believe that this will have. First of all, are they concerned? Second of all, what are their greatest concerns? And thirdly, do they believe that it can change? So from our survey responses, 57% are extremely concerned about illegal dumping in the area, 24% very concerned, and only 9% are not concerned, 14% are either somewhat or not concerned at all. As far as the greatest concerns, health and safety risk was actually the greatest, 51%. As far as the aesthetics of it, 21%. The impact on property values at 15%. Environmental impact at 10%, and individual responsibility at 3%. As far as for the greatest aesthetic problem, so residents reported that street littering and deliberate trash dumping greatly impacted the visibility and aesthetics of their living areas. So we can see 42% said that, and the question below is here. What is the problem that has the largest impact on the visibility and aesthetics in the area you live in? So street littering at 49%, deliberate dumping of trash at 42%, and 9% for poorly kept buildings. This is a very clear slide here to state that there is definitely a concern by residents, and the aesthetics is definitely a major issue for them. As we then look to support for mandatory traction by concern regarding illegal dumping, so support for mandatory trash collection is strongest amongst those who are both extremely concerned and very concerned. Respondents who reported being somewhat concerned or not at all still supported mandatory trash collection at 67 and 65%. So even where it's not a concern for them, they are still in support of having mandatory trash collection. As far as according to greatest concerns about illegal dumping, it's most highly supported by residents who reported illegal dumping to be for health and safety risks, as well as environmental impacts, with 87 and 86%. And support for mandatory trash is lowest, but still a majority amongst those who reported individual responsibility as their greatest concern, at 53%. And this is where we have the highest level of opposition as well. So if we refer back, they were about 3% of the total amount, and their opposition is quite high, but still the majority being in support. So will mandatory trash collection reduce illegal dumping? 85% of respondents believe that it will make an impact. 53 saying that it would be to a great extent, and 32% say to somewhat of an extent. with only 6% believing that it won't have any impact at all. As far as expectations, looking back into some of the demographics, looking at income levels, the lowest income levels as well as the highest are the most optimistic that mandatory trash collection will reduce illegal dumping. The middle income earners are more likely to believe that there will be little to no change in illegal dumping. By expected effect to reduce illegal dumping, so respondents were asked to what extent do you believe that mandatory trash collection will reduce the dumping. Respondents who expect the effect to be the greatest are also the most supportive of the mandatory trash collection, which is very much to be expected. If they are, saying that they think it will have a big impact, to have 95% support is a pretty strong statement. Those who say not at all, still 36% are in support, with 50% stating not at all and that they have an opposition to it. So these are our takeaways, our major ones. As far as the overall 83% of residents support mandatory trash collection. There is a high level of support among all demographic groups. The support is slightly stronger in your 18 to 24 and 45 to 54 age groups. People living in a single-family detached home and those earning under 30,000 or above 100,000 per year. There was a major difference in the level of support between residents with or without garbage pickup services. Those who have no garbage service expressed significantly lower levels of support. However, even among residents without garbage service, 51% support mandatory trash collection, and only 19% actually oppose it, with the rest being unsure or having no opinion. A bit more than half of the respondents reported that having recycling is important to them, and in addition, 57% support the county providing a paid option to provide non-standard pickup for all other items. The high level of support can be understood by the fact that residents are concerned about illegal dumping, with at least 91% reporting some level of concern, and residents believe that mandatory trash collection will reduce illegal dumping. Payment through annual property tax is somewhat preferred to paying directly for the trash pickup service, with that being at 50% and paying directly being at 20% closely behind. That brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions?
Is there anything to add before we go into Q&A? Ms. Matarko? No? Okay, so are there any questions by the board members?
Yeah.
Commissioner Franklin.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I actually met you all recently at the NACO conference and was glad to see that we were utilizing you for this process. We had a couple of questions though, however. Really quick, the first one is, what was the goal or the intended goal for including municipal versus the unincorporated opinion?
I'll chime in here, Commissioner. As a general matter, we'd like to break down, we obviously want to present a breakdown by demography to understand if there's any variation as a result of, age, sex, education, income, race. We also generally do that by geography and trying to think how to divide this up. That was the geographic division that was decided on, just to understand was there any variation by where one would live in the county.
Okay, let me tell you, the reason I asked that question is because our municipalities already offer trash service. So I was wondering what was the goal of including them, considering they're already receiving said trash service and paying for it. But that's neither here nor there. I figured y'all had some magical thing you were doing because y'all so smart like that. But the other question too is in terms of those who are opposed to the trash pickup. how many of those folks actually continued or completed the survey? Because I was looking at the 14% versus the 25% of that negative, or of those that were against it.
We
Just,
only,
just before Michael answers that question, I just want to sort of go back to, I think, one of the other reasons for including the city residents is that they still do commute through and spend time in the unincorporated areas of the county, particularly when looking at some of the responses as far as the aesthetics of the area. There's obviously an interest from those within the cities to still have some level of impact on the unincorporated areas, and they do genuinely believe that it comes from that health and safety perspective, where they would like to see their county to approach this in the right way. So I think that that's another reason for including them there as well.
Okay, and my last question is, I thought it was really phenomenal how your company has utilized this means of surveying citizens and their thoughts to shape out our future. But did you utilize the, I guess it was some tool that you talked about where you were able to garner what people are talking about online as well in terms of trash service, or was it only for those who were actually surveyed?
So we are constantly in a position where we're able to look at that particular kind of data. When we were asked to survey for this particular task, we purely looked at the survey,
Gotcha.
purely at the survey data. We understood that this is something that is of great importance, and so we wanted to have a very scientific approach rather than taking general social media discourse, looking quite specifically at how the residents feel when asked directly.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate it.
Questions? Any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
I looked at that municipal residents versus county residents and looked at those numbers. What struck me is that more of our county residents wanted trash pickup or supported trash pickup than did those residents that supported trash pickups. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think our unincorporated residents were at 65 and municipals were at 59.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I'm looking at the unincorporated residents support versus the municipal resident support, and I noticed the unincorporated residents support is at a higher rate than the municipal resident support. So my question is, why do we believe that the municipal residents don't support as highly and they have mandatory trash pickup?
I would look at this, Commissioner, I'd encourage you to look at it two ways. One is, we generally, when looking at a question where we're asking someone, we put a statement in front of them and we ask them a range between strongly support, somewhat opposed, and no opinion. In this case, I tend to make not too much of a deal of the difference between strongly support and somewhat support, or opposed and somewhat opposed. I would kind of look at the two of them grouped together. I think the difference between those two groups, the unincorporated municipal residents, when you look at even when you look at them separately, but certainly when you look at them together, kind of all of the support group together, they're extraordinarily close to within a point or two, which is kind of right at the margin of error of the survey. So the way I would encourage you to read it is the difference was effectively negligible.
Okay. I disagree a little bit, but okay. My next question, let me see, I wrote them on each of these sheets here. I'm looking at the garbage disposal, and we have 93% that have containers, but we have, 7% that do not? That don't have garbage pickup, but you have 7% that don't have garbage pickup at their homes. But if we look at the numbers, that's telling me that basically 97% have the dumpsters though. If we take that percentage out of the 7%, we have roughly 97% have dumpsters, and about 3% don't. And I use those numbers to say, then why does it doesn't make sense to me that a lot of our trash on our roads and this just, to me, just doesn't justify mandatory trash pickup to me on those numbers as well.
So just to clarify, are you asking, based on that there's 93% of the respondents have current trash collection services, what is their desire to have mandatory trash pickup? The question?
Yes.
I would say that, and we've sort of trawled through a lot of this data beyond just the slides that we presented. We think the most compelling evidence is what we've brought in today. The raw data is something we can definitely provide as well. What it comes down to, and I think that this is why we sort of included it in the executive summary, is that residents outside of their own actions see a problem in the county. And so regardless of whether or not they believe that they are using the services that are available to them and whether or not they are using them effectively and correctly, they still see that there is a problem that mandatory trash collection can be the solution for. And although we are looking with some opposition, the overall responses in virtually every way that we look at it and spin it and consider it and sort of break it down is in support. And I think that it's a really good question because, you know, if you are using your trash collection properly and you're doing the right things, the county should not have a trash problem. Unfortunately, it seems like perhaps you know, there is enough out there that even though you have your own services, you're still looking for a way to improve the aesthetics and reduce the health risks of illegal dumping. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat, yes, sir. And one of the last two questions I have. We see the number one aesthetic problem is street littering. With me driving up and down the streets, I see a lot of more bottles, not your household trash bags. I see some of those, but not many household trash bags, but McDonald's bags, fast food bags, things of that nature. If that is one of our primary problems, is the aesthetics at 49%, wouldn't we need some type of, other than the mandatory trash pickup, some type of other organization or program like our Keep Clayton Beautiful in order to help with that street littering issue?
Yeah, I think they were
Well-
hired to look at.
Well,
the,
it's something more or less.
Do the survey. So I don't think that's really a fair question for
Okay.
them to be able to answer.
All right. Well, then my last one is this. I love what you tried to do here with this, but I would have also liked to see, which the question is not answered, this is the homeowners versus renters numbers is in within this as well. For instance, how many of our homeowners want mandatory trash pickup versus not? How many of our homeowners want to see it included in their tax bill? And that is, the renters don't really have to worry about that. So those are some of the questions that I would have loved to see answered as well.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment on what Commissioner Davis was saying about, we do have some things in place. The police department has something in place, the sheriff's office has something in place, so does the refuge control. So there are several groups, organizations, or county projects that are involved in keeping Clayton clean.
Okay.
Well, I think those programs are reactionary. I think he was alluding more to the fact of being proactive to get people on board to take preventive measures to get it
And I
started.
think the
from
police
start.
department is.
It's-
They have a proactive,
Commissioner Franklin.
Yes, I think that if we're going to enter that space, then we have to enter it with reality. Somebody that's throwing a bag, a Coke bottle or a bag or a can out their car window driving down the road is not going to curtail that behavior because of a Keep Clayton Beautiful or any program. That program is called the state law that states that if you litter, you will get a $1,000 fine. It just simply needs to be enforced. So I think that we're looking at two separate things, but at the end of the day, though, there are residents who are walking along our streets who could put those things in a trash can, but that's behavior on that aspect. What I'm seeing is a lot of business owners. The problem I'm having, particularly in District 3, is that I have business owners who are trying their best to curtail the dumping. One of them in particular paid for extra fence around their area, and it got to the point where somebody broke the lock, and then they're still dumping. So I think that this survey, for me, I think that the data is as clean as I've ever seen data could possibly be. There are a couple of things that I may have a few more questions on, but at the end of the day, it satisfies, one of the complaints I heard about, they felt that the survey was skewed one way or the other. Looking on these results, it would be hard to say that it was skewed when you got people saying that they'll dump their trash somewhere else. So it allowed for them to share their thoughts. So I just hope that this board, we can take a vote at the time that we need to take a vote and let that vote be the vote and move forward however the majority of the board votes. In the meantime, thank you, Zen City. This has been exciting. Good to see y'all working in this space in Clayton County.
Any other questions? I got one question, and that is dealing with the age grouping. When you look at the age groups, the 65 and the 55 to 64 and so forth, what's the breakdown on the number of respondents in each age group? Was it, I doubt if it was equal, so do you have the actual number of those that were 65 and older, those within the group of 55 to 64 and so forth?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but we can absolutely send it after this meeting. Now, I can tell you that the way that we do the sample collection is we recruit respondents that are directly proportional to what the U.S. Census ACS data tells us about the county. So I'll send those numbers over after, but they are, whether for the younger age groups or for the older age groups, the number of respondents very closely match. If we took a proportion of what the census tells us of the Clayton County population and then ran it against that roughly 2,000 person sample, the numbers would be very close.
Yeah, I would like to see those. I would like to see those numbers if you can make sure that you can forward them to us, because 2 or 3 in any category can make a major difference. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. I appreciate everybody for their presentation and information. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to River's Edge Community Trail System Survey results. Mr. Hodges.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman Turner. We'll talk about the River's Edge Greenway. If you don't know, the River's Edge Greenway is down at the old River's Edge Golf Course in Commission District 1 with Commissioner Warner and
It doesn't, it's okay.
Franklin.
3.
Sorry.
3, District 3.
Right.
My
about
kids are
that.
still Warner, it's okay too.
So we sent out a survey. I promise we did the survey. But,
Battery done died.
oh, there we go. Okay. The purpose. We sent out a survey. We wanted to get a better understanding of what the citizens at the River's Edge, in the River's Edge area wanted to see, wanted the Greenway to become. We sent out 3,500 postcard type surveys down in the, it wasn't just the River's Edge area, it was the entire Panhandle area. We had, they were sent out by QR codes as well as the postcards and electronically. We sent those to the River's Edge HOA, as well as other HOAs in the Panhandle area that posted them on their websites, etc. The survey consisted of 8 questions. The methodology with the survey, the survey was conducted 100% electronically. We didn't do any paper surveys. We at the recreation centers, we allowed them to use the computer labs down at South Clayton if they didn't have a computer, and there were a few that utilized that. So again, it was with the QR codes. They could do it on their phone, or they could do it on the actual web. And we only allowed 1 vote per IP address. The results, we did 3,500. Okay, we had 680. We did have quite a few addresses that had bad data in the return from the U.S. Post Office. We only had 173 total citizens respond to the survey. Of those 173, 80% of the responders lived in a subdivision, meaning it could have been one of the subdivisions at the River's Edge homeowners area or in the Panhandle area. 20% of the responders their property backed up to the actual River's Edge Greenway. 40% of the responders wanted a combination of a golf course and a nature trail. We didn't get into the funding sources or how they would spend the money, but they wanted a combination of both the golf course and the nature trails. And 25% of those residents wanted a full-fledged 18-hole golf course. Dietrich, COO, and I have visited several of the homeowners HOA meetings in the area and become pretty familiar with a lot of the homeowners and what they would like to see. Some of those ideas and that came out of the HOA meetings were, the county could lease the land to the River's Edge HOA, and they would manage the driving range and the clubhouse. The community clubhouse and the restaurant, that's what some of the residents wanted to see, basically, and the demo the buildings and return to nature is what some of them wanted. But a majority of the residents, their top concern was the safety and the maintenance upkeep in the Greenway area. Homeowners input in the HOA meeting. Again, the homeowners want to see the old golf course to be maintained at a higher standard. The homeowners want their property values to improve. And the homeowners prefer the Greenway to be for River's Edge property owners only. But we kind of struggle with that in the existing trail. But a lot of times it's just educating the homeowners on who is allowed to use the trails. Again, security was one of the top concerns that came out of the surveys. All right, so some of our existing facility conditions down in at the old River's Edge golf course and the current Greenway. We have a clubhouse, a full-fledged clubhouse with the old pro shop on one side and a restaurant on the other. We'll go into some of the existing conditions of that restaurant here shortly, but we also have a cart barn, a pavilion area, a maintenance barn, a small lake with a pump house, and of course the existing trail. So The first one is the clubhouse. You can see on the previous slide was the front of the clubhouse. The picture on the right is the rear of the clubhouse, with the left-hand portion of that building being the pro shop area, where we've tried to do some exercise, fitness type classes with the homeowners with minimal success. And the other side of the clubhouse would be the restaurant. The picture on the left is inside the clubhouse. The picture in the middle is the restaurant. It does have several cooking pieces of equipment that would need to be updated. However, the infrastructure and the vents and everything are there. You can see down in the bottom right, it does have a large bar area that back behind you could serve, pretty much anything you needed to. The cart barn, this is the cart barn that sits adjacent to the existing clubhouse. It's where the old golf course used to service their existing golf carts. It is a large open area. The condition of the cart barn is relatively good, but I think Director Hopkins has been down there, and however, it does need some work if it wants to be used in the future. There is a very nice pavilion area back behind the cart barn. The pavilion is in great shape. It's well built and will be there for quite a while. This is the maintenance barn that you really don't notice from the roadway. Not many people know it's back there, but the maintenance barn needs a little work. Again, that it could be utilized in the future, but Director Hopkins would have a lot of work to do. All right, so the existing facility, we do have the small lake. This is not Lake Brittany that sits right there on the main drag. However, it's a lake that sits back in one of the neighborhoods that is owned by Clayton County, and we have been working with the Water Authority. We've done a lot of work out there. That area is prone to a lot of flooding from the storm water coming in off the streets and down into people's property and into the lake. The dam that is out there, the Water Authority we have installed a drain pipe that flows back into the Flint way back there on the other side of the golf course. But right now the lake is very nice and is draining properly. This is the existing trail. The picture on the right there is Lake Brittany, that is the main lake there at the River's Edge HOA. You can see the bank. We struggle with what the homeowners down there would like to see. Some of them they don't like fishermen to be out there, and they only want people to stay on the asphalt trail we have. And once we let the bank kind of grow up, then we get the phone calls from people that can't fish. So we work with the HOA to try to keep a happy medium down there. The picture on the left is one of our trailheads at the exit of the existing trail. Some of the property there, you can see there's an abundance of wildlife in the area. That is right up beside the main road. That is where the driving range is located. The driving range is in relatively good condition. It's free of all of the high weeds. We keep that area along with the refuse control. Warden Nelson helps us keep that under control with the large trees and stumps. But the picture on the right is an interesting picture. That is of course county property, but that is being currently maintained by the homeowners in that area. You know, we, Clayton County, do not cut in that area. That is being done by the homeowners. Our legal department has sent letters to homeowners in the area that have been out there, and we have a problem with some of them are cutting down trees. One neighbor, wants his land or, the property behind his house to look like that. And of course, he ends up telling on the other neighbor for, cutting trees or, cutting grass. And, we kind of get caught in the middle sometimes. But that is a sample of kind of what we deal with down there. All right, so this is an overall picture of the probably maybe 8 years ago, around 8 years ago when we first started this project and obtained the golf course from the previous owner. If you're familiar, let me go to this next slide. Okay, yeah. Phase 1 has been completed, and that is the old hole number 8 and 9 of the golf course. So, the phase 2, of course, will be where we continue the trail on to meet our finished product for the trail to go all the way around and everywhere we had planned to go with the plan, the trail. So, hole 8 and 9 is done. One of the recommendations is going to be, of course, back to phase 1, and we did complete phase 1 in-house with our Transportation and Development Department, the Refuse Control, and Parks and Recreation. That was done. Basically we cleared out the entire hole number 9 because it was the most visually pristine type property, and it made improved the area a great deal. We continued on to hole number 8, and now we're faced with phase 2. We hope to be able to work with Central Service to develop an request for proposal, an RFP, to place the trail development out to bid. It is the Parks and Recreation's recommendation that we do this on a cost per foot type RFP, where we would ask the vendor to place a set price on clearing a 30-foot wide area out along the existing asphalt golf cart path. That area would include a 10-foot wide asphalt sidewalk. Funding will be available in the 2020 SPLOST funding, utilizing the Parks and Recreation Green Space Acquisition Fund. We have reviewed the barn, the old maintenance barn, and the golf cart area, golf cart maintenance barn, and that could be utilized as a hub for our park maintenance department to possibly have on the south end of the county to save us some time with the travel all the way down there, some gas. It also could be a potential revenue source for renting out. It would have to again take some work to get it there, but it could be an additional revenue source to rent out the clubhouse, the restaurant, the cart barn, for any type of special event, maybe some type of wedding venue of some sort. Or we could lease the land back to the HOA and have the HOA manage the driving range and the clubhouse. Just kind of looking for some guidance on what you guys would like to see with that. This is a sample. I'm sure you may have seen it, but it's a sample of the postcard marketing that we sent out, where you could scan the QR code, or if you received it electronically, you could click on the link to take the survey. Okay, so then what would be the next steps? Upon your recommendations to the COO, a resolution could be brought back before the board on September 7th to ratify your recommendation. And with that, I don't have any additional slides.
All right, so are there any questions from Mr. Hodges?
Yes. Now, was this strictly done online, or was it paper? Because you said that UPS, somebody had not received,
postcards
did not,
were
postcards,
returned.
right?
Yes, we sent the postcards out, but they could scan the QR code with their phone and do it online, or like the HOA sent letters and memos out to where they could click on the link to go online and do it.
Okay.
So we didn't, to answer your question, no, there were no paper surveys where they physically wrote in their answers.
Well, I guess we'll get to that. I'm thinking it should be some other discussion before we bring something to be voted on.
Well, let me just, along the same lines that Commissioner Hambrick had. Did I hear you right? 680 were returned?
Correct, 680.
Where'd you get your data, your address data from?
Our GIS data, basically, you know, it could have been a vacant lot, or it could have been a homeowner that didn't, live there, but we had several that were returned from our
That's a whole
GIS.
lot.
Yes,
Questions?
Chairman?
Yes, what was your total subset, again, of the people that you surveyed?
Could you say that one more
The
time?
total subset of those who were surveyed, the total number of those who were surveyed.
We sent out 3,500 addresses that went out.
So we're talking
So
about
you-
3,500, and you use GIS, correct? To
Correct.
do it. Did we cross-reference any of that with our tax office? Because some may be owners of property, but does that already correlate with that automatically? I'm not quite sure.
Pretty sure it does correlate with that, our GIS and the tax assessors. We did work with both of those to pull this database.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so you're looking at basically a return rate of like less than like 19% of those that were returned of the 3,000, because you didn't have all you had was what you had.
That's
Okay.
correct.
I think that when we are looking at this definitely is a board decision. Yes, the property does sit in District 3, but let me say this, I was not the commissioner when this became part of the county government. We already know that this is something that's not going to be an easy lift. It's going to be a difficult task for us to make a good decision on behalf of the citizens, but we also have to remember that this was included it was purchased with tax dollars. So I agree with you that there are some concerns with citizens not understanding that when they made that decision to make this particular property a government property, which makes it a public entity. It allows for the public to be able to utilize it. So even the comment about only allow certain people to use it, that's something that we don't even need to discuss. The other portion of it, I understand that some people are cutting down trees and so forth, but I gotta say, that property looked pretty decent. So we gotta figure our way through that. I don't have the answer. I'm here to say that because once again, I was not part of this board when that decision was made. And I do know that it's a tough decision. I also know that we were told some time ago that there would be somebody down there physically every day. That's what we were told in a particular meeting. We have not had those people there. So I could tell you, I personally struggle with us making promises, but not fulfilling those promises as a government. But I don't think it's totally on us as a board, because once again, we were given something that I'm not sure that we thought through all of the nuances and the position it would put us in as a board by taking on this particular property. So I do agree we need to go. Thank you for the survey. I'm not sure that it gives me any much of a clearer picture, to be honest, because I didn't see a recommendation. But the survey itself, glad it was a good effort. We said we were going to do it, and we did it. But I need to continue to work through what are the options? What are the viable options for us? at this point with the money that we have, not what we're intending to have, because we can't keep telling these folks we don't have the money. It's based upon collection. At some point, we've got to understand that we have to make a decision. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. One thing I've learned from this survey and everything else is not to turn it back into an 18-hole golf course, because there's not money there. And I've done research all throughout the state of Georgia, and even those golf courses like in Spalding County that are owned by government, they are saying that they're also struggling in that space. In the uncertain financial era, I think that we're going to have some real conversations.
Commissioner, if I could, you talked about recommendations. The recommendation is to continue to build out of the trails.
Okay.
And ultimately, what we have in hand now, we anticipate if we either use internal resources, which we feel like it's not practical, that we contract that labor out. We feel like we can start the trail development beginning of 2022 is the goal. But one of the things Director Hodges was trying to bring to the table was kind of synthesize all the information that came from the survey and understand there's options that this board could consider to include some variation of golf play, to include maybe even just opening up the driving range, and then more importantly, figuring out how do we continue to program out the clubhouse and even the barn to use that as a revenue producer for the county when it's all said and done. But as it pertains specifically to the trail development, we are in a position to continue the trail development, as Mr. Hodges alluded to, holes 6 and 7. Holes 6 and 7 would be the next iteration of that build out, and we just need to get the blessings of the board as to how you want to proceed on it.
And I thank you so much for that clarity. You brought up something that made me remember. Another issue we got to deal with immediately, those buildings aren't even within our county code. If a building looked like that in the neighborhood, they definitely would be cited. So here we now have a county property that we own, especially that one that you said would need a little bit of work. And you said it'd be a lot of, a little work for our maintenance director over there. That building is definitely of great concern to me, especially when we're talking about keeping Clayton beautiful and we're not keeping our own property beautiful. We got to figure that out immediately. And the community needs to understand that they have to support whatever it is that's there. That's the other aspect of it. You talk about classes, we did those before, and they were not supported. So
Right.
I hear you on the build out, but we got to do something about them buildings like yesterday.
Mr. Stanford, if you and Mr. Hodges, if y'all would reduce what you did, that last part that you just said about the recommendations to writing and send that to us so we can further digest what our options may be.
Not a problem.
May I make a comment?
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chairman? I would love to see us build out, and the suggestion that was made regarding a profit-making place for maybe weddings or whatever, so we can have something nice on the south end. We have everything up in the northern part, and all with the beach and all. So, let's have something down, excuse me, in the southern part too, and to, repair those buildings and all, and have it something. But what has to be understood though is that those residents in River's Edge can't say that nobody can come.
Right.
Like it was stated, it's a, it's a public property.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that become something nice.
And Commissioner, we actually have one, believe it or not, that could be a model. There's one, I think it's called the Chalet over off of Taylor Road.
Mhm.
There's a beach area over there. It's not owned by the county government, but the point is it's a great space that's
Yeah.
being utilized for weddings. So I agree with having that space, but again, we got to have the funding to begin it and to end it. And we got to make sure that we're going to get it completed. The other thing I'm going to throw out there, we don't need to be dealing with any type of water. We need to figure out a way to let the water authority deal with it. Maybe we can do a partnership, because they're getting ready to build out their recreational plan. So maybe they can partner with us on this. I just left from Jacksonville, and they've got several P3 projects up there that don't just deal with transportation, but they deal in the area that we were just talking here. I think we got to think outside the box, definitely, and I'm glad to hear these suggestions. So let's keep working towards where we need to be.
If I can, to pivot back on Commissioner Hambrick's question about the build out, one of the challenges that we've had specifically with the River's Edge Greenway has been that we have to repurpose those buildings. Those buildings were intended to be golf course support elements. So one of the things we talked about is what could that be, and using the golf using the cart barn as an example, if we can turn that into like a wedding venue, and just kind of have that old rustic look and feel, might be an option there that we can continue to build upon. So with Director Hodges and other directors, we certainly will bring back recommendations, not only about what it can be, but what might be some alternative funding sources to help with that.
Well,
After talking to the CFO.
And I didn't mean to step on I had a thought that came out quickly, but don't forget though, parking's gonna be a real issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Because even though that's a great idea, there is no parking there for, not that I thought about it, for something of that magnitude. We really would have to consider how that could happen. And definitely parking would be an issue. It's only like maybe 20 parking spaces out there, if that many.
And not only weddings.
Right.
Right.
But
Any
I'm
other
clear on
Any-
that. We
any
just got to
outside.
think through how and what to do. I'm clear on that.
Mr. Stanford,
Yes, sir.
just a question just to get me up to speed a little bit. How did we become and why did we acquire that parcel?
Yeah, so when the River's Edge Golf Course closed, now going about 9 years, there was the vacillating between the community about whether or not they continue to have it as a golf course, or there might be an opportunity for the county to take on it in some capacity. Then Commissioner Malone made a recommendation that maybe we can try to turn it into some type of alternative use. We did some additional studies on the park side about what were some of the communities doing with green space, and so we came up with the concept of the greenway as the alternative to that. So the county ended up purchasing the golf course. We went through some initial iteration of change, and we went through this whole master plan for the Clayton Connects trail system that Director Hodges showed earlier in the presentation, and then that became kind of part of the build out. But the challenge that we ended up facing is that a lot of it was predicated upon SPLOST money being in space to take care of that. So the board made a priority to do some other build outs throughout the community, and ultimately it didn't leave enough money to kind of do what we consider the total development up to date. So what we're trying to do now is try to figure out ways to reprioritize some of the SPLOST money in the 2020 program, and then utilizing that as the foundation to continue to build out this connectivity of the Greenway down at River's Edge.
Thank you.
And how long ago did we purchase this property again?
That had to be 2013. Yeah.
2013.
2013.
From an equitable standpoint, I'm glad we use internal resources and our staff did an amazing job. But we really have to consider putting the same amount of effort into every portion of the county. So I would like for us to even explore, as we continue to build out, looking at the Pathway Foundation, as we did with other areas, i.e. the Spivey area. Also connecting with the Flint, finding the Flint, because they're working diligently in that space, and they're having great success. And this trail is right along that whole corridor of finding the Flint. So even if we do it internally, whatever it is that we do, it needs to be done with the same intentionality that we did in other spaces in this county.
Duly noted.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Next up is Office of Communications, the branding overview and updates. Ms. Fuller. Oh, no, they're not. Just while she's preparing, the Todd Ford retirement insurance has been taken off till next time.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Chairman Turner, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Hambrick, Commissioner Franklin, how are you? So it was you, the Clayton County Board of Commissioners, who set forth a vision that says that Clayton County would serve as the archway between the region and the world by creating endless opportunities to live, work, and play for all citizens. As a part of that, and your strategic plan, was to enhance the image of Clayton County under the communications and image pillar. So with that, approximately a year ago, a little over a year ago, in July, you approved the official logo, tagline, and marketing slogan for Clayton County, Georgia. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision. With that, I want to update you on not just where we started, but where we are and where we plan to go. And with that, I would like to cue up, if you will, Aaliyah, play the video, and we'll come back and do the presentation. The Clayton County Board of Commissioners is excited to announce its new brand, logo, tagline, Clayton Connected, and marketing slogan, where the world lands and opportunities take off. Our goal is to tell the county's story with a focus on changing perceptions to reflect prosperity and growth. The launch of the new brand will begin with incremental changes to Clayton County's identity system, website, social media profiles, signage, and select fleet. Implementation will continue with budgetary considerations and periodic strategic reviews to evaluate and target the messaging. The new brand consists of a vibrant grid of colors inspired by Clayton County's multicultural population. Additionally, the globe-shaped logo signals Clayton County's access to the world and home of the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. The tagline, Clayton Connected, demonstrates the county's technological infrastructure by using the common email abbreviation CC, as well as the physical connections the county has with Metro Atlanta, which includes 4 interstate highways, 19 exits, and the world via the airport. It also illustrates the friendly environments manifested by the county's 7 municipalities: College Park, Forest Park, Jonesboro, Lake City, Lovejoy, Morrow, and Riverdale, which enables citizens to feel they are part of a close, caring community in the midst of a large metropolitan area. The marketing slogan, where the world lands and opportunities take off, complements the connected, global positioning. The Clayton County Board of Commissioners Office of Communications, in consultation with 365-Degree Total Marketing, one of Georgia's premier branding and destination marketing companies, developed the new brand. This process took approximately 9 months, which included in-depth research, market analysis, stakeholder interviews, and an open community survey. Rebranding Clayton County will enable the county to expand services, accomplish local and global growth objectives, foster and develop new business relationships. Ultimately, the goal is to position Clayton County to be more competitive with surrounding counties and to showcase all that Clayton has to offer current citizens, prospective residents, visitors, businesses, and the world. For more information, visit claytoncountyga.gov or contact the Clayton County Board of Commissioners Office of Communications. So with that, approval of the Clayton County logo, part of your prioritization was creating a positive presence by enhancing communications and the image throughout the state and abroad. So what we're bringing to you today is a branding overview of what we've done over the past 12 months, so you can see what work has been put in and how the money has been used to see that vision through. Heath?
Turner, Commissioners, good evening. So as Valerie said, I'm going to share a little bit tonight some of the things that we've done to create exposure for the county over the last 12 months since the new brand was launched, as well as look at some of the economic indicators over that same time period, and then show you a lot of the work that we've done in partnership with many departments in the county within that same time period. So this is one of the digital boards that we have. It's located on I-285. And you can see there the number of impressions that it gets during that March to July time period. This is a static board on I-85. You'll see the same information from March to July. 146,267,160 impressions from that. We have a combination of digital, 20 different digital boards at the airport. As you'll see there on that top picture, those are on a digital wall adjacent to the baggage claim. And then the one at the lower right are actually located on the baggage carousels themselves. So 20 different digital boards in that location in the airport. Some of y'all are in this picture. We did a Marta Bus Wrap that was donated from February to April of 2021. And the only investment we put for that was just the wrap installation itself. We didn't have any monetary spend for that exposure. This is one of 2 Google ad campaigns that we did. This one was focused on business, and you'll see where the world lands and opportunities take off. And this was the second campaign. It had a tourism slant to it. So that slogan was tweaked a little bit to where families land and fun takes off, more of a recreational feel. You'll see from Google Ads from May through July of this year, it slowly increased and has consistently been over 200,000 impressions on a monthly basis. The website is currently under development, but you will see significant increase from July 2020 to July 2021 in unique visitors, in total sessions, and page views all across the board. And then some of the print publications that we've done, this is Georgia Trend. You'll see 2 quarter-page ads with some editorial combination that was added value in the April issue. And then this is a ad that we have coming out in September. It's actually a collaborative effort between the county and Invest Clayton. It will be coming out in the Georgia Trend issue, where the airport will be the feature cover story. And it was a great opportunity where we could bring 2 entities together and partner. We originally had a quarter-page ad budgeted, but in working with Invest Clayton, we were able to increase that ad size to a full-page ad for actually a little less investment than what we had budgeted. So it was a great win-win for everybody involved. When we look at some tourism stats, so obviously the pandemic was a big impact for everybody, but when we look at hotel motel tax for the last 12 months, we were able to generate $758 million or $758,089, which is down from the prior year. But the thing to look at, and is encouraging to me when I look at this number, is you guys are within 30% of the prior year, and the industry average across the board was over 50%. So there are still a significant number of folks that are traveling to Clayton County for business and recreation. And then sales tax indicator is a good, or sales tax distribution is a good indicator of overall economic stability. You do see an increase over the last 12 months in local option sales tax distributed, as well as the SPLOST funds collected. So we looked at the total business license issued over the last 12 months. It's 403, which means additional sales tax, excise, and payroll taxes. It is slightly down from the prior 12 months, but I do find it very encouraging in that pandemic time period that there are still a lot of folks that believe that Clayton County is a good place to open business and do business. And then residential growth. So this is new home construction sales over the last 12 months. I don't have the 12 months prior to that, but we obviously know that that's an increase in property tax additions. You can see there that over the last 12 months, that's $618,247, just over that $247, and it's broken down by monthly. As I mentioned before, the website is currently under development in collaboration with us and the Clayton County IT department. This is a sample ad that we did in South Atlanta Magazine in January 2021. It was a full-page ad, and we had some graphics and editorial combination to it. That publication circulation is a little over 5,000. And then we did some Clayton County News and Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Clayton County News we ran an ad once a month. And the AJC, we actually ran 3 ads a month for that distribution. And you can see those circulation numbers as well. Atlanta Magazine, we had more of a little tourism slant. You'll see there that it's the family's land, and fun takes off as well. We were able to get some added value editorial to talk about Clayton County in addition to the graphics as well that was given to us as added value. And this is just kind of a summary of some of the economic indicators that I talked about earlier, keeping in mind that our media spend didn't begin until March of this year. So March through June, we had just under a $50,000 investment. And then this is the visibility that we got for that same amount of money. So through the use of static boards, digital boards, the airport, the Marta Bus, Georgia Trend, South Atlanta Magazine, Clayton County News, the AJC, Atlanta Magazine, and Google. A lot of eyeballs looking on all the exciting things happening here in Clayton County. So we also wanted to kind of take a look at, after we launched, how well was the brand being received and recalled. So this is the survey from January of this year, 6 months after the brand had been out and about, encouraging that over 70% recognized the new brand message as the Clayton County. The second indicator, not a surprise, that the seal, which had been around for an awful long time, was still very visible, and very few had probably seen some of those other logo options in some of the presentations, and they showed some recall as well. So the brand implementation, as Valerie alluded to, it was approved in July. And now these are kind of some of the things that we have done with a different variety of departments over the last 12 months. So you got the logo, the tagline, and the marketing slogan. This was the marketing campaign that was launched in July 2020. We had the brand standards book so that we indicated what colors were in the logo so that we had cohesive use of it from all departments across the county as they were doing additional marketing pieces. This is the implementation book that showed how to use it, what you can use it, when to use what logo. And then I think all of y'all have seen kind of the brand overview book that came out of that process as well. It had a lot of the demographic statistics, the research data, as well as the graphics all included in one document for y'all. E-signatures went out and they were fully in place for all departments by the end of July of last year. We had a 30-day rollout to make sure that they were all in place. The next thing we focused on was the individual department logos, and you'll see that we did a vertical and a horizontal version so that they could have both options depending on how they needed to use it. The next item was the corporate identity package. So it was a combination of business cards, digital stationery, envelopes. We started doing some promotional swag items and really wanted to indicate, and showcase that when to use the color logo, when the white one is best, when it's the black. We did some PowerPoint templates in August. This is some vehicle signage that we worked with the transportation department for the variety of different vehicles and different color palettes depending on the make and model and color of the vehicle. I did some pull-up banners as well. Then we started working on some complementary logos. So you'll see that here we were able to incorporate the globe and plane from the county logo into the middle of the fire and EMS. And then we did the same corporate identity for their department as well. Bus shelter signage designs, so this is conceptual designs. They have not been implemented into the county as of yet. And then we did the same thing with the police department that we did with fire. And you'll see that we kept their brand colors, and we're able to utilize some similar elements from the county brand into their existing. And then corporate identity as well. We worked on the boardroom presentation. So it was initially designed back in October. It was approved and ordered in August of this year. And I checked with him actually first of this week. It is on schedule, and we could have it ready for install probably the second week of September. We did some PR templates for press releases. You'll see a combination of seal only, logo only, and seal and logo combinations. After doing the police, we went and did the Clayton County Corrections Department as well with their 3 different elements. We did a series of thank you cards that you guys are able to utilize local printing in your print shop to get these out for y'all's use. And then I alluded to the brand lift survey that I showed you the results earlier, but this was design of that went out. So it was a printed piece with a digital QR code for the electronic submissions as well. We redesigned all of the commissioner rec cards. We did some trade show exhibit booth, tablecloths and tents. So the light pole design was done in February. It's another one of those that the design element is done, and it's a future possibility for rollout when budgetary dollars allot for the purchasing. To make sure that we have the embroidery consistent, we actually had a thread color indicator so that you can tell exactly what thread color each element of that logo is. So as y'all are ordering apparel, you can provide that to the vendor and make sure that you have a consistent imagery. These are department signage for CCTV. Conceptual designs for a couple of the departments that are in newer buildings or in departments that aren't in transition during a lot of the construction that you guys have going on. You'll see that it's logo, department name, and the slogan, marketing slogan as well. Gateway complex signage designs. We have put together some rough specs and have shared that information with building and maintenance as they're working to try to do that RFP process to get a vendor selected for the construction and implementation portion. Same with elevator graphics. The design have been done. We haven't moved forward with any purchasing. It is in a future opportunity as budget allows. And then the community pillars, this is really the marketing messaging, so we can make sure that everyone in the county is telling the same story when they're talking about your location and your proximity to Atlanta and the cost of living and the parks and rec and senior services and the education system. And then we did a complimentary logo earlier this year with the library system as well. A brand new logo for the Clayton County podcast was done in March of this year. Some vehicle wrap conceptual designs have been done for a variety of individual vehicles. So as new vehicles are added to the fleet, we can work with the vendor that you guys choose to get that stuff designed and implemented and on board. The new logo for the water park as well was done in March, and you'll see there the full color, the one color black and white, and then the one color white version. And Valerie, I think that is the end of our presentation.
You did pretty good. All those slides, so I'm impressed. I'm
So-
also impressed with the amount of work that went into this, so y'all have been doing a tremendous job. Do you have something extra before we start the Q&A?
Yeah, we're still in the completion process. We're still completing up some of our media buys and some are finalizing some items for our county departments. But I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Your vision is the reason why I'm here, the reason why I was hired, and the reason why I took the job. Without your leadership, without your vision, the decision could have been different, you know, for you and for me. So I just want to say, as an employee of Clayton County and a citizen of Clayton County, thank you for the vision, thank you for your support, because we couldn't do it without you actually approving this. This was your vision and it's coming to fruition, so I love when things go from concept to completion. So thank you for your leadership and your guidance in this.
Well, we definitely have come a long way, I'll tell you that. All right, questions? Commissioner
Yes,
Hammer.
well, I'm not clear on what, you mentioned those billboards and you said something about impressions and so many thousand impressions. What is that?
So
And how do
that's-
you count
So
that?
that's the traffic count that would go past the billboard companies, their Clear Channel. Clear Channel has the airport signage and those static and digital boards. So they have traffic counts based on where those boards are located, the number of vehicles that pass by that location on a daily basis. And then they're just exponentially multiplied out.
So, impressions are vehicles.
Oh, okay, so it's not necessarily people see,
It's-
you know.
So an impression is somebody who has the potential to see it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner?
Thank you for this detailed presentation. And I think that our communications manager just needs to put our voice on everything with the county, and our image will be even better. I don't know how it's gonna be better, it's gonna hear it, right? But I also have a question regarding, the question you read. How do we reconcile this data that's shared with us today in terms of our perception with all of the other presentations we've had? One of the things I've constantly brought up on this dais is consistency and making sure that we reconcile what comes before us. We hear this presentation, that presentation. Quite often the data isn't the same. We just made the decision to put in certain parameters in terms of taxes based upon information provided to us. It was specifically stated that residential growth is down. You all just communicated it up. Also, we had a presentation previously given to us that the perception had not changed and that we still need to do work in that space. Now, I do understand that we've only been doing this for 12 months, but the bottom line is we get presentation after presentation. At what point are we going to go back and reconcile this information so that we can ensure that as a board, we have everything we need to make any decisions moving forward? Because as it was stated, impressions are just possibilities of use.
Well, so I can tell you the residential growth numbers are directly pulled from new house sales from the MLS. So I mean, that's where that data came from. From the perception standpoint, I know that we did the January survey to kind of see we did the initial survey when the project started, trying to gather feedback from the community, where we asked, how they thought things were going on certain elements, whether it was crime, residential growth, litter, all education, all that type of stuff. That's kind of what went into the original data research in developing the brand. In January, 6 months later, the plan was to say, okay, it's been out there for a short period of time. We also asked some of those same questions. The only elements that I showed kind of was the brand recognition, but there was a consistent correlation with the strengths and weaknesses and assets and things they'd like to see at that 6-month time period, that it wasn't initial. And then now that we have hit that 12-month mark, the plan is as well, so 6 months later, to do another survey and see kind of how are we doing on some of those elements, to do a deeper dig into, of those 403 new business licenses, what type of businesses they were, how many of them might have been restaurants or retail, because we know those are two segments that people said they'd like to see more. So we are digesting into those numbers as well, to kind of see if what they said the county needed or what they wanted is additionally what is actually happening. I just didn't have all that data by this time period.
Personally, thank you for your response. Personally, what I'd like to see is for us, the staff, to go back and look at those segments, look at the data that was pulled from these various presentations, look at the segment of the population that was surveyed, and come back before us, so that way we can have a true sense of what is our return on investment. All of this looks good, but how much are we spending on it? What is our actual return on the investment? How do we quantify that? How do we qualify that? Because that's going to allow us to be good stewards over taxpayers' dollars.
I have something that's been on my mind for a while. I still get the paper, the HAC paper, and they have the different sections, north side, whatever. And we do good things, but I can never find us in that south area, south southern counties or south counties or whatever. They'll even have little cities, you know, and all. And I'm thinking, now we did that, or we've done that, you know, a year ago, or kind of thing, positive stuff. So how do we get in there?
Well,
I think that would help on the vision of Clayton and what people see us or how they see us too. I think that would be a positive.
I agree with you, Commissioner Hambrick. And to answer that question, we do submit to all media, all events and activities. Sometimes it just depends on who's on the desk that day and who's writing. I don't want to begin. I've been in a newsroom and I've worked in a newsroom for 10 years, so I know how that system works. But the same information is being submitted to all of the media outlets.
Well, they never have us in that south, that little part, that little portion.
So
South Metro is what it's called.
I'll take a look at that again and make sure, one, that the addresses are up to date and that the contact person has not changed or the desk for the newsroom has not changed, and just ask that question.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great point, because not only that, but all these other magazines such as the ACCGs and National Association of County Officials, all these other engineering magazines, those are places that business owners actually go to find information about where they're looking to grow. And so that's to piggyback on what Commissioner Hambrick just brought up. Those are spaces we got to figure out a way to work through. More, for me, more than putting the elevator wrap, because that's stuff we're going to see, we're going to identify with.
And I would
But
say
we got to change that perception outside of us.
And I would say, Commissioner Hambrick, that part of the early initiative strategy was to launch the brand, get the new visuals out, make a big splash. Over the next 6 months, a big portion of our strategy would be more PR-based to allude to some of the items that you were just discussing as well.
Yeah, we talk about changing our image. This is the start of changing our image. And then we got to carry a lot of that on our backs as being the leaders in this community, to make sure that people know that we aren't who they perceive us as being here on the south side of Atlanta. This is a great county with great people and great resources and amenities, and we just got to tell our story.
And the effort's not to go back, but I think that bigger than that, let me just say this, that's a great point, Mr. Chair. But we know our story. I think that what I'm hearing, even from Commissioner Hambrick and myself, is how do we get beyond these walls? How do we get beyond the mileage of Clayton County? This is great, it's a start, but we just can't put paint up and say, oh, it looks good. Now, how are we going to be strategic enough to make sure that we see a true return on the investment from this image change that we've done? This is only a start, so we have to let that drive us in the future. And that's why I keep bringing up, my concern is we've got data in different spots, different sects. I don't know that we can even make a decision, because only 600 people were looked at here, 600 or 700. Whereas the other presentation we had, there were other facets. So I think that in order to really get where we want to be, I think we have the same goal. We really do. This board wants a better perception of our county. But how do we get beyond that point, beyond just this county understanding how great we are?
Good point, Commissioner. Two things, resource allocation and synergy about how we go about telling our story. You got to realize a year and a half ago, telling our story was predicated upon 18 different departments with 18 different images, and 18 different ways for which we're trying to tell that story. This is the first time, based upon the vision of this board, that there should be one message and synergy in how we get that message across. So what we're trying to do now is try to figure out how do we implement training, because it's one thing, to your point, to have the image and the brand out there. It's another thing for somebody to be able to articulate what that brand and that image is, and do it in a very uniform way. So we still got some work to do, but I think the primary is that the big step that we had to make is that we could continue to tell our story from 18 different lenses.
That's perfect.
We had to come to some conclusion that our message had to be cultivated through one lens, one image, and one brand. So we're still trying to work through those nuances about how we make that work, but the goal is to make sure that staff is trained appropriately and we provide the resources where, as you stated, get us a return on investment.
And just to add, the communications department is the pivotal point of all the information that should flow through, even from this board, that we should make sure that we filter all of our information so that we are on one page, one message as a board, as a county, and it should emanate from the communications department.
Can I ask just one question? I know there's a difference between marketing and advertising, and it seems like, which we should be spending a lot of time on marketing right now. Is there going to be a concerted shift to begin to say, look, what type of advertisement are we going to do for the county?
Yes. So part of the whole digitizing and trying to figure out where we spend our time around analytics, to Commissioner Franklin's point, we got to have some centralized repository where we get information from. Because sometimes where you get information from differs slightly, but it gives totally two different messages. So one of the things we're trying to do now is get to a point where we can have a centralized repository or where we get information. So to your point, when we talk about marketing, we're saying the same thing, opposed to having different messages or slightly different messages that sometimes may confuse our citizens about the direction we're heading.
Thank you for your presentation. Again, a lot of good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, fiscal year 23 capital outlay. Ms. Lett, how are you? Doing well.
Good evening, commissioners, and good evening, chairman. While we're waiting on that, I can get started anyway.
Okay.
I'm here tonight to present to you about the capital outlay for 2023 for the Riverdale Library. The Georgia Public Library Service has a facilities department that gives grants to libraries for new construction, for renovation, and for major things that need to be either repurposed or shifted in libraries. So over the years, before I got here, we had applied for a capital outlay grant for the Forest Park Library, and we got, I think, $2 million for that project. So in between that, we applied for one for the Northwest Library, but we didn't get up the list in time for it to make the funding. So we now are looking at the Riverdale Library. The Riverdale Library has become one of our busiest libraries. It used to be the third busiest library, but when they put the two Marta bus stops across the street, it jumped to be the second busiest and quite often the busiest. So when we look at the finances that we get from the Riverdale Library and the amount of traffic in the Riverdale Library, it's a very busy place. It's busy with homeowners association, it's busy with the children, and we have in that library one meeting room. And that meeting room often is in big demand. So the community is trying to get in to do homeowners association meetings. We have children's programming that is done in there because we do learning spaces from there. We have entrepreneurial workshops that we do from there. We have teen programs in STEM. So there's a lot of competition for that space. So as we looked at the Riverdale Library, we looked at, is there space that we could repurpose? And there's a courtyard behind the library, which is approximately about 5,000 square feet. The library itself at this point is 12,000 square feet. And we want to enclose that courtyard and make that into a children's programming room, to make that into a teen STEAM room or makerspace kind of room, and also a meeting space. So we want to take some of the things that we have in space and make that usable space. So in order for us to do this, we wrote a proposal to the Georgia Public Library Service. And we are trying to get from them monies to be able to fund this project. And what they do, they will give you a portion of the money that you ask for. So we're asking, the whole project we're estimating to cost about $1.8 million. They will give you 90% of the first million, so we'd have to put in 10%, and then they give you 50% of the other portion of the project. So we're asking for $1.8 million, and the county's portion would be about $500,000, and the state would put in $1.3 million. So we know that this library, some of the pressure will be taken off a little because of the Northwest branch. But because those two Marta stops are right in front of this library, a lot of that traffic continues to come. And a lot of the people who have gone to the Northwest Library and then they come back to Riverdale, they are made at home at Riverdale. They really like the Riverdale Library. And the programs there are quite vigorous. We're working now, we got money from HUD, we're working to recreate the computer lab in that library. So we're trying to make it an upgraded library because it was built in 1991, so it's about 30 years old. So it's time for it to have a facelift. And the outside of the building is made of a composite that you cannot pressure wash and you cannot paint. So over the years, it has started to deteriorate, and you can see the deterioration on the outside of the building. So we want to help do something with the envelope of the building to make it look more presentable the way it looked when it was first built. Because if you could have seen the slides, the first slide was one of the way the library looked when it was first built. But now there's a lot of discoloration on the front of the building. We have a lot of molding on the back of the building. So the building is in a state of disrepair, and it really does need to be repaired. So this is an opportunity for the state to help us to repair this building and bring it kind of back up to code. So in a nutshell, that's kind of why
That's
I'm
your
here today.
presentation. I've been to that library several times, and you're absolutely correct. It could use some improvements, some renovations, and that courtyard would be perfect for that to be enclosed. That park and ride, as well as the Marta stop, to your point, is a busy spot. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Ms. Lett, are you talking about enclosing all of it? I thought we were gonna leave something open, you know,
We're
with the
gonna
benches.
include all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna enclose all of it. One of the reasons for that is because we have a big problem now is whenever we get the grass cut, there are still loose rocks and it still breaks the glass. So if they don't bring the boards,
Right.
we can't get the grass cut, so that's been an issue. And we have bees that have settled in the wooden benches. They love it there, but they keep the rest of us out of there. So we are wanting to use all of that space because we really do need the whole space. But we still have that huge lawn behind the library that we could do some other stuff
Yeah,
with.
that's what I was talking
Yeah, so we got, but no, we're not going all the way back to the street. That would be wonderful. But that's a lot more money than we're proposing at this point.
Any questions?
Can we get some sort of just synopsis?
Or if you just send a presentation to us.
Oh, yeah,
that-
I can do that.
That's what I was gonna say, Chairman. Director Lett did submit the presentation. We're not pulling it up, so we'll send it to the board after
Yeah,
the
that'll
work
work.
session.
Her
Thank
words were better than a presentation.
She knew what she wanted to say. So.
Exactly.
You got to know. what
One
you got
question
to-
for you though. What
Sure.
about the Mara Library? That has to be about 40 years old.
Yeah, it's in line. The good thing about the state is that we can write proposals every year, but the deal is, once we write the proposal and get it on the list, now I have to talk to our legislative group to get them to talk it up to get it up the list. Because generally they will fund somewhere between 1 and 7 of the projects. And right now, looking at the 22 list, we're number 11 on the 22 list, which means we probably won't make 22. That's why this is on 23. So we will come up to be maybe like around number 4 or 5 in 23. but we're
Yeah,
gonna talk it
next
up in
year.
the meantime.
Yeah, next year we might need to shoot
Yeah,
for
but we
that.
need
That
to do
place
more
needs some
too.
help.
But that's one reason too, there is a bill that is being proposed from the Congress and the Senate for building America's libraries. And I've had my board and my library folks petitioning and advocating for this bill because it will send $160-something million to Georgia to improve libraries. And that means all the libraries in Georgia will get some funding for improvement. So we're starting now working on our plans for what that look like. So when we get the money, we will have our plan already ready.
Well, y'all really showed out with that Northwest Library, I tell you that for sure. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
very proud of it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work you're doing. All right. That was the last presentation. Nothing else before this board. We stand adjourned.